can stop the Lord Almighty? Who 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 can stop the Lord? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power, fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains. Every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Every knee will bow before Him.
I know that 2020 has been chaotic on top of like everything else that you have personally in your life, but I want you guys to know this, that I strongly believe as I've been studying the book of Judges, that God is about to do something amazing, not just like here in Moore, but like across the world. Because I have really started to see, other than like the pandemic that we are experiencing, the book of Judges, they are just going through it. And a lot of it's their own fault, but that's okay. So if you don't remember, 2 weeks ago when we were online last, we started this series called Without a King. And we started talking about how the Israelites finally found the promised land. They got to where they wanted to go, and then their leader died. And they were kind of like, oh, that's unfortunate, but God, could you like tell us where we need to go and what we need to do? And God said, if you follow these instructions perfectly, if you listen to everything I say, you will have success in life. Be like the same as you like getting a job. They'll tell you, I'm going to give you all this money. You'll feel like you're fully loaded with your $300 paycheck, but you have to do every single thing that I say. Israelites struggle with that concept. And so I'm going to pick up this story here, starting in chapter 2, verse 10. So after that generation died, so after the generation that we talked about last time we met, another generation grew up who did not acknowledge the Lord or remember the mighty things that He had done for Israel. So the Israelites did evil things in the Lord's sight and served the images of Baal. So Baal is one of the many gods that the Canaanites would follow. They abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors who had brought them out of Egypt. If you've noticed anything throughout the Old Testament and some of the New Testament, if there's ever a time where God's kind of like guilt-tripping people a little bit, He reminds them of what He did in Egypt. And that's like that strong reminder of like, yeah, that was me, so you should probably come back and listen to the things that I have to say. So they went after other gods, worshiping the gods of the people that were around them, and this angered the Lord. They abandoned the Lord, they served Baal and the images of Asherah, another god of the Canaanites, and this made the Lord burn with anger against Israel. So He handed them over to the raiders who stole their possessions. He turned them over to their enemies, and all around they were no longer able to resist them. Every time Israel went to battle, the Lord fought against them, causing them to be defeated, just as He had warned them, and the people were in great distress. I know, it's 2020. I don't want to talk about angry God. I want to talk about wrath. I want to talk about New Testament God. I want to do that, because New Testament God lets me go, Jesus loves me, this I know, because I made this up right now. But I'm sorry, I'm just like Kylie's like, please get off the stage. Well, you have to understand what God is doing when He is angry. You have to understand that there's something important that's happening. So when we are talking about the book of Judges, there are two themes that are happening. This is the first theme. It's called the cycle of sin. And actually, so it starts over here where it says Israel is delivered. So Israel is back on track with God. Everything that they are doing is for God. And then that brings them up to then Israel is serving the Lord. And then they fall away, they fall into sin and adultery, then Israel becomes enslaved, then Israel cries out to the Lord, then God raises up a judge, and then Israel is delivered again. And I know that for us, we're like, oh, that sounds like a lot of work and really stupid, and I don't care. But if you have grown up in the youth group, you have lived this cycle. It just looks a little bit different. So instead of it saying Israel is delivered, my youth group went to camp. And then at camp, instead of it saying Israel serves the Lord, it is we had cry night, and I love Jesus and everything that he is doing for me. But then you got home, and it turned to Tuesday. And then you fell into the sin and adultery. And then all of a sudden you felt like you were enslaved because you were in this, you were at this barrier. You couldn't go further. You couldn't understand why you couldn't connect more with God and why everything in your life just wasn't going the way that things were going when you were being delivered and everything was happy. And then you cry out to the Lord and you're like, I don't understand. And then for most of you, God raised up another opportunity for you to go to another camp. And then you start this whole cycle over again. So if you've grown up in the youth group, you get this, you've lived this, and you're trying to figure out, how do I get beyond that? And that's what we're going to learn from the Israelites. You see, because in that cycle, that's exactly what had happened. So they found the promised land. They were willing to do everything that God had said, but then as soon as they lost that first battle, they gave up. They allowed the Canaanites to stay in their land, and that's when they started turning their backs on God, because the Canaanite gods, they were a lot easier to follow. They had way less rules. So it's comparable to like our gods in 2020, where I'd rather watch TikTok than read my Bible. Like those are the kind of things that we're talking about. But let me ask you guys this, and I want you to be really honest. Like I don't want you to look around and be like, oh, my friend doesn't think that. Like I want you to be sincere on this question when you raise your hand. Think of the person that is like the most spiritual individual that you have ever met, and they're your age. Now let's assume, or like just have a hypothetical, they started having premarital sex. Do you, as an individual, believe that you have a right to judge them based on the actions that they are committing? Yes? Raise your hand if you think yes. Now let me ask you another question. Think of just like the absolute most wonderful person in your life that you love with all of your heart. Not your dog, but a person. I know a few of you are like, I love my puppy. Now if that person, sorry, that was like a stab at ass, my apologies. But if that person that you thought of started doing heroin, wouldn't you want to tell that person to stop doing those things because it's extremely harmful to their body, to the things that they're doing? You see, we as people, we have decided that sin is supposed to be a private matter. Whatever I do, that affects my relationship with God. It doesn't affect Tyler. Whatever you guys do when you die and you get to heaven and you get judged by Him, I mean, all those times at youth group, we kind of told you not to because the guy at the pulpit kept saying to stop doing what you were doing, but nobody else in our youth group ever held me accountable for my actions. And then that leads us to saying things like, well, I don't agree with it, but like, I don't care. But sin has never been a private matter. And the truth is that yes, you absolutely can judge a fellow Christian based on the actions that they're doing. But listen to me when I say this, because I know some of you are getting a little heated. There's a difference between judging somebody and condemning them. If somebody came into this youth group and you openly knew that they were doing something that turned their back on God, and all you did was gossip about it behind their back, that is condemning them. If all Tyler ever did, I'm going to pick on Tyler a lot tonight, but if all Tyler ever did when he came in here was like give me a high five, and I looked at Tyler and just said, dude, you're a sinner, you're probably going to go to hell, he wouldn't want to keep coming back here. Let alone would he ever want to bring his friends. He probably wouldn't want to bring his siblings, maybe one or two of them, because he's probably like, you probably deserve that place, but not me. But that's the difference between judging somebody and condemning them. You see, we as Christians, we have to understand that if we make sin private, that means that I'm accepting that whatever happens to you is up to you, and I will never do anything to save you. We say things like, when you accept Christ, you get to be a part of our body. But if you're affecting your body and you're making it sick, that's on you. But sin has never been private. How many of you guys have ever heard of like a pastor at a church that did something super corrupt and it made you kind of question things about your faith? How many of you have seen somebody at school that you know goes to church and they have a relationship with God, but the way that they carry themselves makes you really question their motives? Everything that we do is a reflection of Jesus Christ. And so the second theme that we get into in this book is about the people who are called judges. And so this is what it says. Then the Lord raised up judges to rescue the Israelites from their attackers. Yet Israel did not listen to the judges, but prostituted themselves by worshiping other gods. How quickly they turned from the path of their ancestors who had walked in obedience to the Lord's commands. In our very own lives, we have people that I pray would become judges for all of you. Not because I want them to condemn you, but because I want everybody in here to eventually get to an understanding that the things that you do have consequences for your eternity. And I want you guys to understand that in order to break that cycle, in order for you to fix that barrier, in order for you to go beyond that place that you get stuck at when you get to camp then come home, it's up to people to call out the lifestyle that you are choosing to live. And it's difficult. I just told the junior high kids before you guys got here that I loved my group of friends when I was growing up. We did some of the dumbest things. We made a couch fly. I can't tell you how we did it. We threw dirt clods at each other, but they were lit on fire. Again, I can't tell you how we did it. But those were the people that I loved because they helped make me the person that I am today because they challenged me. And yeah, they challenged me to do really dumb things. But they challenged me to always be trying something new. And that's exactly what I have developed myself into. But when I would come home from camp, I never wanted to tell them about Jesus because I was too afraid of the things that they would say. I was too afraid that they would judge me for the lifestyle that I wanted, and I was way too afraid to lose these people that I had known for so long. Now, at the start of this, I made a joke, saying about Jesus loves me, this I know, and all that. But in the New Testament, Jesus also tells us that we have a right and responsibility to judge other people. And so in the book of John, starting in chapter 8, verse 1, I'm not going to read this whole story to you, I'm going to summarize up to a certain point. But this is the story of the woman who committed adultery. How many of you guys remember this story? So she gets dragged out, she's caught in the act, and then the leaders that are there, they're trying to catch her, they're trying to trip Jesus up. They're trying to say, like, dude, you can't keep up with this. Like, this lady, she's supposed to get stoned. And so it says this, starting in verse 10. I skipped a very important part. So Jesus draws a line in the sand. And then he says, any of you who have never committed a sin, any of you that have never angered God, go ahead, throw a stone, I'll get out of the way. Now we can read verse 10. When the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. And Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. The reason that we have convinced ourselves that we shouldn't judge is simply because the biggest thing that we're afraid of that other people will then feel the rights to call me out in the actions that I do. So if I called Karen out because I felt that she was going against the will of God, well then as soon as I told all these students about flying couches, now Karen wants to have a conversation with me about why I shouldn't tell teenagers about these dumb things that I used to say. But that's exactly why we hide that. But the other reason is because we have developed what God looks like in our minds. We have decided what God does for us and what God doesn't do for us. And that's why we love New Testament God so much. And we don't like listening about Old Testament God. Because I'm here in this God. This is the God that lets me do whatever I want and get away with it. But this God, this is the God that loved Israel so much that he had to hand them over to their enemies in order for them to understand how dumb they were being, how they were sorely mistaken. And after this story, in verse 16, it goes on, and God tells Israel, I was testing you, and you failed. So the reason a lot of us feel like we get stuck in that cycle that we talked about, the reason that you feel like you can't get out of that is because you are too afraid to go against God. You are too afraid to go against the life that you have created without God. And you don't want to make those changes alone. And I don't blame you. But that's exactly what we're trying to open our hearts and minds up tonight, is understanding that this is a place where we should be able to lovingly tell each other, I love you too much for you to keep doing the lifestyle that you're doing. I don't want you to end up ruining your eternity. I want you to end up in heaven. So let me read to you this passage of why my God told me that you shouldn't be doing these things. Not my personal opinion, not the things that make me upset because you wore the wrong t-shirt or you like the wrong bands, but the reasons that actually pull you away from God. And my favorite part about the story that we read in Judges is that in verse 14, we hear that God is angry. He went against Israel. But then by verse 16, it says that his deliverance had arrived. That deliverance cannot arrive, though, if there are people in your life that are not willing to help you grow. You cannot receive the love of God if you cannot receive the kingdom of God by living out the God that you have created in you. I want everyone, real quick, to just close your eyes, and I'm going to pray us out here. I asked you guys to be honest with God a little bit ago. I'm going to ask you to be honest again. But if you are somebody that has dedicated your life to God, and you have fallen away, you have slipped away, you were waiting for a camp this summer that didn't happen, and now you're trying to figure out how you're going to get that God that you're so used to having. And if you're somebody that dedicated yourself, but you're feeling anxiety, you're tired of living in fear, you're tired of feeling like you're not loved or that you're not good enough, that you are not accepted, and you would like to restore that relationship with God, I just want you to raise your hand, not because I'm going to call you out, because I just want to pray for you. Amen. And with your eyes still closed, if there is somebody in this room that maybe has never accepted Christ, but you're thinking, I'd like to give him a shot, I'd like to see what this love and this acceptance is all about, would you please raise your hand? Amen. Let's pray. God, I am so thankful to be here again. It has been so long, and I am so grateful that you have given us tools to continue your ministry, to continue talking about and worshiping about you, God. But this is what we live for, God, this community. And God, I know that these words are so hard because for so long we have been taught the wrong thing. But I pray that these students know that judging somebody can be done with love. That it should always be done with love. Not because we think that they need to change their life, but because you tell us who needs to change their life. God, I pray that these students always come to you before they go and tell someone how to live their life. That they come to you and ask you for the courage and for the wisdom, but then also for the peace, because it's never easy. God, I love each and every one of these students, and I am so grateful to be here. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. All right, so let's do this. We'll make it nice and easy. Let's do gals. You guys have a big room, though. Is there enough couches in there?
Oh, big room.
Big room? Okay.
You, Lord, oh, your mercy never fails me, and all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up till I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. Every breath that I am made, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. My give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. I surrender now, I give you everything. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
So I have a huge news for you guys. So next week from 6 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday night for all ages, 6th through 12th grade, both campuses, we're going to meet outside for water balloons, water guns. We're going to have MK Reynolds out here, the guys that come for a Halloween party. We're just going to kick off some fun because COVID has kind of taken away some of that. So feel free to come out. Just a heads up, we will only be providing bottled water for all students. There won't be any food or anything, so please eat before or be prepared to eat after you come. We're also going to have an opportunity for live outdoor worship. It's going to be an awesome time. I can't wait to see you guys. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining us online tonight. Now we're going to go to small group on Zoom.